The Watchers above. The Kethran scout ship Silent Judgment hung in Earth's shadow like a metal predator waiting to strike. Its dark hull absorbed starlight, making it invisible to human detection systems. Inside the ship's observation deck, 4 pairs of silver eyes watched the blue planet below with cold calculation. Admiral Fiss stood before the main viewing screen, her tall frame casting a shadow across the polished floor. The Kethrans were a proud species, evolved from apex predators on their homeworld of Kethra Prime. Their pale skin had a metallic sheen, and their elongated skulls housed brains capable of processing vast amounts of tactical information. They had conquered 47 worlds across the galaxy, and Earth would be number 48. Final reconnaissance complete, Admiral, reported Captain Vorth, the ship's military strategist. His voice carried the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. Human defenses remained pathetically inadequate. Their strongest weapons could barely scratch our hull plating. Fiss nodded slowly, her fingers tracing patterns on the control panel. The gesture was an old Kethran habit, something they did when calculating odds of victory. And their population centers, densely packed and poorly defended. Vorth replied with what passed for a smile among his species. They cluster together in massive cities with minimal escape routes. A few precise strikes on their power grids and communication networks will create total chaos. They'll surrender within days. Dr. Zelani, the expedition's xenobiologist, looked up from her data screens. She was smaller than the others, her silver eyes marked with the thin lines that came from years of detailed study. The psychological profiles are equally encouraging. Humans are highly emotional creatures. They panic easily and make irrational decisions under stress. Their history is filled with examples of armies fleeing at the first sign of superior force. Scout Nyrex, the youngest member of the team, shifted uncomfortably in his position. He had been studying Earth for only 3 months, but something about the humans troubled him. Dr. Zelani, what about their history of resistance? Some of their wars lasted for years, even when facing overwhelming odds. Zelani dismissed the concern with a wave of her hand. Primitive stubbornness, nothing more. They fight each other constantly over resources, territory, and ideological differences. They lack the unity necessary for organized resistance against a superior force. Look at their current conflicts. The main screen shifted to show various news feeds from around the planet. Wars, protests, political debates, and social unrest painted a picture of a divided species constantly at odds with itself. You see, Vorth said, gesturing toward the screen, they can't even agree among themselves. How could they possibly unite against us? Admiral Fiss had been silent during this exchange, but now she spoke. What is the status of the invasion fleet? The main battle group will arrive in 72 hours, Vorth reported. Admiral Krex commands 200 ships and 50,000 troops, more than enough to subdue this world. The resource extraction teams are prepared as well, added Zelani. Earth's mineral wealth and biological diversity will provide excellent additions to the Empire. The human population can be processed for labor, or simply relocated to less valuable worlds. Nyrex felt a strange sensation in his chest, something his species rarely experienced. It took him a moment to recognize it as doubt. Admiral, shouldn't we observe them longer? Understand their capabilities more thoroughly. Fiss turned her cold gaze toward the young scout. Nyrex, we have studied this species for 30 standard years. We have intercepted their communications, analyzed their technology, and observed their behavior patterns. What more could we possibly need to know? I don't know, Admiral. It's just that some of their entertainment media shows remarkable creativity and problem-solving abilities, and their scientific achievements, considering their short lifespans and limited resources, are actually quite impressive. Captain Vorth laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Entertainment fiction, Nyrex, fantasy, and wishful thinking. Their actual military responses to crises are disorganized and ineffective. Remember the incident with their global pandemic. Chaos, denial, and infighting. These are not the traits of a dangerous species. Dr. Zelani pulled up additional data on her screen. The Scout is referring to their fictional narratives about heroism and sacrifice, purely aspirational content. Real humans, when faced with genuine danger, behave quite differently. Our behavioral analysis shows they prioritize self-preservation above all else. Then why do their news reports constantly show individuals risking their lives for others? Nyrex persisted. Emergency responders running toward danger, civilians helping strangers during disasters, volunteers working in dangerous conditions to help others. Statistical anomalies, Zelani replied dismissively. A tiny percentage of the population engaged in attention-seeking behavior. The vast majority of humans avoid risk and responsibility whenever possible. Admiral Fiss moved to another console, bringing up detailed scans of major human population centers. The decision has been made. Earth's resources are too valuable to leave in the hands of such a chaotic species. We will proceed with the invasion as planned. The bridge fell silent except for the gentle hum of the ship's systems. Outside the viewing ports, Earth continued its slow rotation, unaware that its fate had been decided by creatures watching from the darkness of space. "Admiral," Nyrex said quietly, "may I make one final observation request?" Fiss's expression showed mild irritation, but she nodded. "What do you propose?" "Let me monitor one of their urban areas for the next 24 hours. Not their military installations or government centers, but ordinary civilians going about their daily lives. If we're going to rule these people, we should understand how they really behave when they think no one is watching." Vorth scoffed. "A waste of time. We already know everything we need to know about human behavior." But Dr. Zelani looked thoughtful. "Actually, it might provide useful data for post-conquest population management. Understanding their daily routines could help us maintain order with minimal force." Admiral Fiss considered this for a moment. "Very well, Nyrex. You have 24 hours to conduct your observation. Choose your target location and begin immediately. But remember, this changes nothing. The invasion fleet is already en route." Nyrex moved to his station and began scanning Earth's surface. He needed to find a location that would give him a representative sample of human behavior. Large cities showed the most activity, but which one would provide the best insight? His instruments detected elevated electromagnetic activity in the North American continent, specifically around a large city called Chicago. Weather patterns showed an approaching storm system, and emergency service frequencies were more active than usual. It seemed like an ideal place to observe how humans responded to stress and uncertainty. "I selected Chicago, North America," Nyrex reported. "High population density, diverse demographics, and current weather conditions that may create challenging situations." "Proceed," Fiss ordered, "but maintain passive observation only. We cannot risk detection at this critical juncture." As Nyrex began focusing the ship's sensors on the sprawling city below, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to witness something important. The other Kethrans had dismissed human resilience as myth and propaganda, but Nyrex had seen patterns in their data that suggested something more complex. Humans were physically weak compared to Kethrans. That was undeniable. They were short-lived, emotionally volatile, and technologically inferior, but they had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and natural disasters that had wiped out countless other species. There had to be something that explained their persistence. "Beginning detailed observation of target zone," Nyrex announced, adjusting his instruments to focus on street-level activity, recording all data for post-analysis. The screens filled with images of humans going about their daily routines. People walking to work, children playing in parks, families shopping for supplies. It all seemed so ordinary, so peaceful. These people had no idea that death was watching them from the stars above. But as Nyrex watched, he began to notice small details that the others had missed. A woman helping an elderly man cross a busy street. A group of teenagers sharing their lunch with a homeless person. a construction worker stopping to help a lost child find her parents. These weren't the self-centered, cowardly creatures that Kethran intelligence had described. These were beings who seemed genuinely concerned about each other's welfare, even when there was no obvious benefit to themselves. Interesting behavioral patterns emerging, Nerex reported. Humans appear to engage in frequent altruistic activities without apparent reward or recognition. Altruism is an evolutionary dead end, Vorth stated flatly. Species that prioritize others over themselves don't survive. What you're seeing is probably some form of social display behavior designed to attract mates or gain status. But Nerex wasn't convinced. He had studied enough species to recognize genuine altruism when he saw it, and he was seeing it everywhere he looked in this human city. As the day wore on, the approaching storm system began to affect Chicago. Rain started falling, and wind speeds increased. Nerex watched with growing fascination as humans adapted to the changing conditions. They shared umbrellas with strangers, helped each other avoid flooded areas, and checked on elderly neighbors. Fascinating, he murmured. They actually become more cooperative under stress, not less. Temporary pack behavior, Dr. Zelani explained without looking up from her own research. Many species show increased social bonding during external threats. It doesn't indicate any meaningful change in their fundamental nature. But Nerex was beginning to suspect that his colleagues were wrong about human nature. These weren't the selfish, cowardly beings described in Kethran intelligence reports. These were creatures capable of genuine sacrifice and cooperation. As night fell over Chicago, Nerex prepared to continue his observations. He had no idea that within hours he would witness something that would change everything the Kethrans thought they knew about humanity. The invasion fleet was still coming, but the real battle for Earth's future was about to begin in the heart of a single human city, where one ordinary woman would show the galaxy what courage truly meant. The fire that changed everything. The storm that had been building over Chicago all day finally broke just after midnight. Rain hammered the city streets while wind howled through the narrow spaces between skyscrapers. Most humans had taken shelter indoors, leaving the streets largely empty except for emergency vehicles and the occasional late-night traveler. Scout Nerex maintained his vigil from the silent judgment, watching the city through the ship's advanced sensors. The storm provided an excellent opportunity to observe human crisis response, and so far, the results had been encouraging for Kethran invasion plans. Humans were indeed taking shelter and avoiding unnecessary risks, just as their behavioral models predicted. "Still watching your pet humans?" Captain Vorth asked, approaching Nerex's station with obvious amusement. "Have they confirmed our analysis yet?" "They're behaving predictably," Nerex admitted reluctantly. "Seeking shelter, avoiding danger, prioritizing personal safety." But even as he said it, something felt wrong. His instruments were detecting unusual activity in one section of the city. Dr. Zelani looked up from her research. "I told you their altruistic behavior was just social display. When real danger arrives, they revert to basic survival instincts like every other species." Admiral Thiss approached the observation station, her silver eyes reflecting the glow of the monitoring screens. "Are you satisfied with your additional research, Nerex? The invasion fleet will arrive in 18 hours. Before Nerex could respond, his instruments detected a massive energy surge from the downtown area. Emergency frequencies exploded with activity, and his screens lit up with rapidly spreading thermal signatures. "There's been some kind of explosion," Nerex reported, his fingers dancing across the control panel. "A large residential building is on fire. The structure appears to be compromised." The main viewing screen shifted to show a terrifying scene. A 12-story apartment building was engulfed in flames, with fire spreading rapidly through multiple floors. Smoke poured from broken windows while emergency vehicles raced toward the scene with sirens wailing. "Excellent," said Captain Vorth, studying the chaos below. "This will give us perfect data on human crisis response. Watch how they panic and abandon each other when faced with real danger." But as the Kethrans watched, something unexpected began to happen. Instead of fleeing the area, Humans were gathering around the burning building. Some were emergency responders, but many appeared to be ordinary civilians who had come to help. Curious, Dr. Zelani murmured, adjusting her sensors for closer observation. They're not exhibiting the expected flight response. Nyrex focused his instruments on the crowd forming around the building. Fire trucks arrived with their crews immediately beginning rescue operations, but they were clearly overwhelmed. The building was too tall for their ladders to reach the upper floors, and the internal stairwells were blocked by smoke and flames. The emergency responders are having difficulty, Nyrex reported. The fire is spreading faster than they can control it, and many residents are trapped on the upper floors. Through his sensors, Nyrex could see human shapes silhouetted in the windows of the burning building. Some were waving desperately for help, while others held small children. The situation was clearly desperate. This is where we'll see their true nature, Vorth said with satisfaction. When the rescue becomes too dangerous, they'll abandon the trapped humans and save themselves. But instead of abandoning the rescue efforts, more humans kept arriving at the scene. Some brought blankets and medical supplies, others formed human chains to pass water buckets, and a few even tried to enter the building despite the obvious danger. Their behavior is not matching our projections, Dr. Zelani said, her voice showing the first hint of uncertainty. These civilians should be fleeing the area, not moving toward the danger. Admiral Fiss studied the scene with growing interest. Focus on individual subjects. I want to understand what's driving this behavior. Nyrex adjusted his sensors to track specific humans in the crowd. Most were showing elevated stress responses, but they weren't running away. Instead, they seemed to be organizing themselves into support groups, each focused on different aspects of the rescue operation. Then his instruments detected something that made him pause. A single human figure was approaching the building from the east side, moving with purpose through the chaos. The individual was female, average height and build, wearing simple civilian clothing. Nothing about her suggested she was trained for emergency response. There's an individual approaching the building alone, Nyrex reported. No emergency equipment, no protective gear. She appears to be a civilian. Probably a resident trying to retrieve personal belongings, Vorth said dismissively. Typical human attachment to material possessions. But as they watched, the woman stopped in front of the building and looked up at the burning floors above. Through their sensors, the Kethrans could see her face clearly. Her name was Maria Santos, though they wouldn't learn that until later. She was 34 years old, worked as an elementary school teacher, and lived alone in a small apartment 6 blocks away. Maria had been walking home from her evening job at a tutoring center when she saw a fire. She had no connection to the building or its residents, no obligation to get involved. By all Kethran predictions, she should have watched from a safe distance or simply gone home. Instead, she did something that would shatter everything the Kethrans thought they knew about humanity. A woman's voice called from a 4th-floor window, barely audible over the roar of the flames and the noise of the emergency response. Please help us. My baby is up here. We can't get to the stairs. Maria looked up at the window, then at the overwhelmed firefighters who were focused on evacuating the lower floors. She made a decision that defied every model of rational behavior in the Kethran database. She ran into the burning building. What is she doing? Dr. Zelani gasped, leaning forward as her instruments tracked Maria's heat signature disappearing into the inferno. She's gone insane, Vorth stated flatly. The stress has caused a complete psychological breakdown. She'll be dead within minutes. But Nyrex was watching something else on his screens. Her vital signs are elevated but stable. Heart rate and breathing patterns suggest fear, but not panic. She's moving with purpose through the building. Through their thermal imaging, they could track Maria's progress as she found a stairwell that was partially clear of smoke. She climbed steadily upward, using her shirt to cover her mouth and nose. When she reached the 4th floor, she began methodically checking doors, calling out to identify the woman who had called for help. Found you. Maria's voice came through the Kethran audio sensors as she reached the right apartment. The door was unlocked, and she pushed inside to find a young mother holding a baby, with a toddler clinging to her leg. "Oh, thank God," the woman sobbed. "I'm Sarah. This is Emma and little Marcus. The hallway is full of smoke, and I couldn't see the stairs. I'm Maria. We're getting out of here right now." Maria's voice was steady despite the obvious danger. She took the baby in one arm and lifted the toddler with the other. "Sarah, hold on to my belt and don't let go. Keep your head low." The Kethrins watched in stunned silence as Maria led the family through the smoke-filled hallway to the stairwell. The building was becoming an inferno around them, with flames licking at the walls and the structure groaning under the stress of the heat. "She's going to get them all killed," Vorth muttered, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. "No," Nyrex said quietly, his eyes fixed on the thermal readings. "She's found a clear path. She knows exactly where she's going." Maria guided the family down 2 flights of stairs before they encountered a wall of smoke too thick to penetrate. Instead of panicking, she led them to a window facing the alley beside the building. She broke the glass with a chair and began calling for help. "Here, 4th floor, east side. I have a family." The firefighters below quickly positioned a ladder truck and began raising it toward the window. Within minutes, they were helping the family down to safety. The baby was crying but unharmed, the toddler was scared but okay, and Sarah was weeping with relief and gratitude. "She saved them," Dr. Zelani said in amazement. A complete stranger risked her life to save people she had never met. But Maria wasn't finished. As soon as she reached the ground, she turned back toward the building. "There are more people up there," she told the fire chief. "I heard voices from the 6th floor while I was coming down." "Ma'am, you can't go back in there," the fire chief said firmly. "The building is becoming structurally unsound. It's too dangerous." Maria looked up at the burning building, then back at the fire chief. "Those people don't have anybody else. Your ladders can't reach the 6th floor, and the internal stairs are blocked. If I don't go, they die." "This is not rational behavior," Vorth said, his voice showing confusion for the first time. "She's already accomplished a successful rescue. There's no logical reason for her to increase her risk." Admiral Thys said nothing, but her silver eyes were locked on the screen showing Maria's determined face. "I know the building layout now," Maria continued, speaking to the fire chief. "I can guide them to the window where you can reach them with the ladder. Give me a radio so I can coordinate with you." Before anyone could stop her, Maria took a radio from one of the firefighters and ran back into the building. "Insanity," Dr. Zelani whispered, but her instruments were showing something remarkable. Maria's stress hormones were elevated, but her cognitive function remained sharp. She wasn't acting irrationally. She was making calculated decisions based on information only she possessed. Through their sensors, the Kethrins tracked Maria as she climbed through the smoke-filled stairwell again. This time the heat was more intense, and the structural damage more severe. Parts of the ceiling were beginning to collapse, and the air was becoming toxic. But Maria kept climbing. She reached the 6th floor and began the same methodical search she had conducted before. This time, she found an elderly man who had been trapped when debris blocked his apartment door, and a young couple who had become disoriented in the smoke. "Follow me," Maria said over the radio to the fire chief below. "I'm bringing them to the east window on 6. Have the ladder ready." The Kethrins watched as she guided the 3 humans through the deteriorating building to the same window she had used before. The ladder was waiting, and within minutes, all 3 were safely on the ground. 2 successful rescues, Nyrex reported, his voice filled with something the Kethrins rarely felt: awe. She saved 6 lives. But once again, Maria wasn't finished. As soon as her feet touched the ground, she looked up at the building and spoke into the radio. "There's a dog barking on the 8th floor. Someone's pet is trapped up there." The fire chief stared at her in disbelief. "Ma'am, with all due respect, we can't risk human lives for an animal. The building is going to collapse." Maria handed him back the radio and started toward the building entrance. "Then I guess it's a good thing I'm not asking for your permission." "Stop her," the fire chief called, but Maria was already disappearing into the smoke and flames again. In the observation deck of the Silent Judgment, 4 Catherine minds were being forced to reconsider everything they thought they knew about humanity. "This makes no sense," Vorth said, but his voice had lost all its earlier certainty. "She's risking her life for an animal. There's no evolutionary benefit, no logical purpose." "She's not doing it for evolutionary benefit," Nyrex said quietly, beginning to understand something profound. "She's doing it because it's right." Dr. Zelani's instruments tracked Maria's third ascent into the burning building. This time, the conditions were almost impossible. The stairwell was partially collapsed, the air was toxic, and the heat was approaching lethal levels. But Maria climbed anyway. She reached the 8th floor just as a section of the ceiling crashed down behind her, cutting off her escape route. For a moment, it seemed like she was trapped. The Catherine's instruments showed her heart rate spiking as she realized her situation. But instead of panicking, Maria began problem-solving. She found another stairwell, partially blocked but passable. She located the apartment with the barking dog, a large German shepherd that was terrified but unharmed. "Come on, boy," Maria said, her voice hoarse from smoke inhalation. "Let's get you out of here." The dog, sensing Maria's intent to help, allowed her to guide him toward the alternate stairwell. Together, they began the treacherous descent through a building that was literally collapsing around them. "She's not going to make it," Dr. Zelani said, watching the thermal readings that showed the building's structure failing. "The load-bearing supports are compromised. The building will collapse within minutes." But Maria didn't give up. When the stairwell became completely blocked, she broke through a wall into an adjacent apartment. When that route was cut off by flames, she found another path. She was relentless, creative, and absolutely determined to save that dog. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Maria and the German shepherd emerged from the building just as the upper floors began to collapse behind them. She was burned, exhausted, and barely conscious from smoke inhalation, but she was alive. And so was every person and animal she had gone back to save. As paramedics rushed to treat Maria's injuries, the Catherines sat in stunned silence aboard their ship. They had just witnessed something that challenged their most fundamental assumptions about intelligent life. "Admiral," Nyrex said softly, "I request permission to delay the invasion." Admiral Fiss turned to look at him, her silver eyes reflecting emotions she had never felt before. "On what grounds, Scout?" "On the grounds that we don't understand this species at all," Nyrex replied. "That woman just taught us something about courage that isn't in any of our databases. She showed us that sometimes the strongest response to overwhelming force isn't to submit or fight back." "What is it then?" Dr. Zelani asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Sometimes the strongest response is to sacrifice yourself for others, even when it makes no logical sense," Nyrex said. "And a species capable of that level of courage, we can't conquer them, Admiral. We can only respect them." Admiral Fiss looked back at the screen showing Maria being treated by paramedics, while the rescued families, and even the dogs, surrounded her with gratitude. The invasion fleet was still 18 hours away, but suddenly 18 hours seemed like enough time to change the course of galactic history. "Signal the fleet," Admiral Fiss ordered. "Cancel the invasion. We're making first contact instead." Below on Earth, Maria Santos was being hailed as a hero by the local news media. But she deflected all the praise with characteristic human modesty. "I just did what anyone would do," she told reporters, unaware that her actions had just saved her entire planet from conquest. Above in the darkness of space, 4 alien minds were learning that sometimes the strongest beings in the universe are those who choose to be gentle, and the most dangerous warriors are those who fight not for conquest, but for love.